There are places on Earth where humans build not to conquer nature, but simply to survive one more day. There are mountain passes twisting through hundreds of hairpin turns at the edge of the sky, villages clinging to the rim of cliffs, railways cutting through clouds, and salt deserts. And there are places where human survival itself is the most astonishing feat of engineering. Millions of people living packed into just a few square kilometers, building homes on swamps, on landfills, on land no one else would dare to claim. This is not a list of wonders to admire from a distance. These are places where the line between possible and impossible is redrawn every single day by reckless engineering, by poverty, by sheer will to survive, and sometimes simply because people have no other choice. Welcome to the most dangerous places on the planet, where the act of survival alone is enough to leave you speechless. Closed in by electric fences, concrete walls, and a restricted coastline, the Gaza Strip covers only about 141 square miles, with almost no direction left open to the outside. Beneath these buildings, about 97% of the groundwater is unsafe to drink because seawater intrusion and untreated wastewater have contaminated the soil below. Restrictions on steel and cement force many structures to reuse materials from the rubble, making already damaged buildings even more fragile. After repeated destruction, broken concrete and twisted steel have gradually become a familiar part of the urban landscape. Around the area, sections of concrete wall rise to about 20 feet, combined with fences, observation towers, and surveillance systems. At night, power cuts leave many streets in darkness, while the steady sound of drones continues above, keeping a sense of tension through the night. The sky above Agbogbloshie is rarely clear, as smoke from burning electrical cables continuously covers the entire electronic waste area in a layer of grey. Directly beneath shelters, made from old computer cases and discarded materials, lies an artificial ground layer containing lead at about 45 times the safe level. Across this surface, the sound of hammers striking circuit boards, glass breaking underfoot, and melting plastic creates an almost constant layer of noise. Across the ground, hundreds of fires burn the plastic around electrical wires to recover metal while releasing dioxins and other harmful chemicals into the air. Beneath these fires, black ash, broken screens, and circuit boards have built up for years, forming the surface where more shelters continue to be built. Close to the burning areas, living spaces still stand directly on ash and broken electronic parts, only a short distance from the fires used to process electronic waste. Thousands of windows close around a small courtyard, making Monster Building turn the sky above into a tiny patch of light trapped between concrete walls. The enclosed design traps heat and everyday smells around the lower floors, while natural wind struggles to move through the deep courtyard. The narrow space also amplifies sound, causing voices, machines, and even falling objects to echo through many floors above. On the outside, thousands of air conditioners, metal frames, and hanging clothes cover the windows, creating a wall of details that seems almost endless. Even after more than half a century and many powerful typhoons, the reinforced concrete frame still keeps the entire building standing. Deeper on the lower floors, natural daylight quickly fades, forcing many interior spaces to rely on electric lights even in the middle of the day. Summer temperatures above 104 degrees Fahrenheit can cause Ghazipur to catch fire on its own, as millions of tons of waste inside continuously produce flammable methane gas. Deep inside the garbage mass, constant decomposition keeps the core as hot as about 140 degrees Fahrenheit, while heat and smoke escape through different points on the surface. The loose, porous waste absorbs water easily and makes the slopes unstable. In 2017, about 50 tons of garbage collapsed onto a nearby road and killed 2 people. Right below those unstable slopes, thousands of waste pickers still search by our hand through medical waste, chemicals, and other dangerous materials. Above them, scavenger birds circle the top of the mountain, while underground fires sometimes create red glowing spots across the slopes at night. Once rising more than 213 feet, Gazipur became so large that warning lights were even suggested on the top for low-flying aircraft. Nearly 1 million people are packed into less than 0.8 square miles in Dharavi, where homes stand so close together that many families are separated by only a thin wall. Beneath this maze of homes, the former swamp was gradually filled with waste and organic material. So many narrow paths still flood with dirty water during the rainy season. Many homes rise 3 to 4 floors using metal sheets and scrap wood, while workshops below can be separated from family sleeping areas by only a thin wooden panel. Inside alleys only, about 2 feet wide, extended upper floors nearly block the sky, making it difficult for daylight to reach the ground. Along the base of the homes, open drains run beside the narrow alleys, carrying trash and dirty water directly past everyday living spaces. In this tightly packed network, fires can spread quickly from one structure to another, while the narrow alleys make both access and escape much more difficult. White sand is blown through gaps in the metal walls of Kayalitcha, where tens of thousands of temporary homes spread across a sandy plain that constantly changes with the weather. Just beneath this sand, groundwater rises close to the surface during the rainy season, turning many house floors into mud and leaving dirty water standing for long periods. Since 1983, rows of metal shelters have grown under apartheid policies, while the metal walls can push indoor temperatures above 104 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Running through the settlement are paths less than 3.3 feet wide where wastewater channels cut across the sand between tightly packed rows of homes. Many houses can be built in about 24 hours from metal sheets, plywood, and reused materials, yet they may remain in use for many years. The danger increases because the shelters stand with almost no space between them. So one fallen paraffin stove can cause fire to spread quickly through several rows of homes. Beneath the tightly packed metal roofs of Tondo is not natural ground, but a layer of waste and scrap that has built up over decades and now supports the entire community. With more than 207,000 people in each square mile, metal roofs and walls stand so close together that many families have almost no space between them. Among these tightly packed homes, many shelters made from old metal sheets and wood stand on poles beside polluted canals and can become unstable when the waste below sinks or strong winds arrive. In many areas, waste that has collected for years has formed raised mounds where people continue to build homes directly on this artificial surface. Deeper inside, alleys, less than 3.3 feet wide, are almost covered by extended metal roofs, making it difficult for daylight to reach the ground. Around these paths, dark canal water and waste sit close to living areas, forcing temporary structures to remain between weak ground and polluted surroundings. Each high tide rises close to the floors of homes in Makoko, where thousands of houses on stilts form the Venice of Africa across a flood-prone lagoon. Many homes are built only from wood, metal sheets, and simple materials over soft mud, so stepping outside often means going directly on to narrow waterways. Right below the floors, waste breaks down in water with almost no oxygen, releasing methane and hydrogen sulfide that give the area a strong smell. To keep the houses standing, workers must dive into the murky water to inspect and replace wooden piles weakened by marine organisms and decay. The waterways keep changing with the tides and newly built homes, making it difficult for routes between the houses to remain fixed. A three-story floating school once stood on 256 plastic barrels, but the structure collapsed during a storm in 2016, showing the limits of floating architecture. A sea of red brick nearly fills the view in Petare, where tens of thousands of unfinished homes are packed across hillsides, sloping from 30 to 45 degrees. Beneath these homes, clay soil, with very little plant cover, can easily absorb water after heavy rain, increasing the risk of landslides. On this difficult ground, many brick homes rise 3 to 5 floors with very limited foundations or reinforced concrete columns, often depending on nearby buildings for support. Running through the settlement is a network of alleys less than 3 feet wide, connected by endless concrete stairs that make access difficult for large vehicles. At night, tens of thousands of yellow lights come on, turning the red brick homes into a long band of light across the hillside. Directly beneath those lights, tangled electrical wires run close to people's heads, increasing the risk of electric shock and short circuits when the cables are damaged. Directly beneath the glass financial towers, thousands of tents across Skid Row fill the streets, creating a sharp contrast between wealth and life outdoors. During summer, heat stored by the concrete can push temperatures inside closed plastic tents to around 110 to 118 degrees Fahrenheit, turning temporary shelters into dangerous spaces. Major roads, old industrial areas, and commercial buildings closed around Skid Row, making the tent-filled streets feel separated from the city around them. Along the edges of the area, some structures use spiked surfaces, divided benches, sloped designs, or water sprinklers to stop homeless people from sleeping there. On many sidewalks, tents, cardboard, and shopping carts take up most of the walking space, sometimes forcing pedestrians closer to the road. Shopping carts filled with clothing and personal belongings appear throughout Skid Row, and some are tied together as temporary barriers to help protect tents at night. The sound of helicopter blades often breaks the silence around Refugio Rosalba, a mountain shelter standing 5,675 feet high among sharp limestone peaks. The thinner air at this height makes every step with a heavy backpack harder on the steep rocky slopes leading to the shelter. Reaching the hut does not end the challenge, because cracked limestone quickly pulls rain and melting snow underground, forcing the shelter to store water carefully. Starting as a simple wooden hut more than a century ago, the structure has been repaired and reinforced many times to survive snowstorms, falling rocks, and harsh mountain weather. Maintaining this remote shelter is also difficult because no road reaches it, so food, fuel, and building supplies must be transported by air. Step outside the door, and only a narrow patch of ground remains underfoot, while deep slopes disappear into the clouds just a few steps away. On a hillside sloping up to 45 degrees, Rosina pours down the slope like a giant waterfall of brick and concrete where heavy rain can make many buildings unstable. Above the walkways, tangled electrical wires run close to people's heads and sometimes spark when it rains. Directly beneath this network of wires, the roof of one house can become the base for another built above it, creating structures up to 10 floors high without engineering plans. Moving through the area depends mainly on steep alleys and narrow concrete stairs, with some passages less than 3.3 feet wide. Along these steep routes, thousands of moto-taxi drivers move through the narrow streets, carrying people and goods to areas that larger vehicles struggle to reach. At night, tens of thousands of yellow and white lights shine across the hillside, turning Rosina's layers of brick and concrete homes into a glowing landscape stretching from the top to the bottom of the slope. A tidal range of nearly 20 feet turns the Chittagong coastline into a giant trap, carrying enormous ships deep onto the muddy shore and leaving them stranded when the water falls. Directly beneath the ships, asbestos lead cadmium and mercury from the dismantling process can fall straight onto the unprotected mud. In front of ship walls, as high as about 15-story buildings, thousands of workers climb rope ladders and use cutting torches to remove large sections of steel from the hulls. Once separated, these heavy steel sections can fall directly onto the muddy ground, close to workers below. Many workers still move across the slippery mud in sandals or barefoot, while hot and heavy metal continues to be cut above them. After leaving the muddy worksite, some workers return to shelters built from old plywood, rusty metal sheets, and materials recovered from the dismantled ships. Covering the valley slopes with tightly packed metal roofs, Kibera holds nearly 1 million people within about 0.97 square miles, leaving almost no open space between the homes. A stream, cutting through the settlement, receives large amounts of waste every day, carrying polluted water directly beside the densely packed houses on both sides. Many homes are built from woven branches covered with mud, so the walls can soften and become unstable after long periods of heavy rain. Alleys less than 3.3 feet wide twist beneath extended roofs, making it difficult for daylight to reach the ground. Cutting through this maze is an unfenced railway line, where pedestrians and vendors must quickly move aside whenever a train approaches. The danger increases during the rainy season, when water rushes down from higher ground, turning paths into streams of mud and sometimes carrying away homes built on the slopes. Even normal breathing becomes difficult in La Rinconada, a settlement more than 16,700 feet high in the Andes, where the body receives only about half as much oxygen as it does at sea level. In the long-lasting cold, tens of thousands of people live in homes built from metal sheets and plywood, with almost no insulation, clean water, or proper drainage. Outside the homes, melting ice creates muddy areas mixed with household trash and waste from gold mining. Deeper underground frozen ground makes it especially difficult to dig foundations, install pipes, or build sewer systems. On cold nights, many people burn trash close to their homes for warmth, adding more smoke to the already thin mountain air. Behind the rusty metal roofs, white glaciers cover the mountain peaks, creating a sharp contrast between the Andes landscape and the mining settlement below. The lotus-shaped concrete roofs of Dhaka railway station now have to cover crowds around 10 to 20 times greater than the station's original design capacity. Beneath these roofs, heat from engines and tens of thousands of people can push the heat index above 113 degrees Fahrenheit, while humidity reaches about 85%. During rush hour, train horns and steel brakes echo through the concrete roof system, pushing noise levels to around 115 to 120 decibels and placing heavy pressure on the hearing of long-time workers. In the middle of the platform, tightly packed crowds can carry passengers along with the flow, sometimes making it almost impossible to choose their own direction or keep any distance from others. During the rainy season, the tracks can disappear under 12 to 20 inches of muddy water, while heavily crowded trains still move slowly into the station. On the train roofs, passengers also face high-voltage power lines and low bridges, yet overcrowding still pushes many people to keep climbing on top. Cold winds can push the wind chill close to minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit in Norilsk, where more than 100,000 people still live, almost cut off from the rest of Russia's road network. Daily life is also disrupted when the city goes through about 45 winter days without sunlight, before summer brings nearly 65 days of continuous daylight. The metal plants once released about 2 million tons of sulfur dioxide each year, creating heavily polluted air and helping form acid rain around the city. Around the industrial area, a zone stretching about 19 miles once lost most of its vegetation, leaving only dry trees across the open ground. to remain stable on permafrost. Many apartment blocks stand on concrete piles, driven about 33 to 98 feet deep, preventing heat from the buildings from reaching the frozen ground below. The open space beneath the floors provides extra insulation for the foundations because melting or shifting permafrost can reduce the stability of the entire building. With no road leading across the lake, Kalyazin Bell Tower rises 244 feet above the water, like the last trace of a drowned world. In 1939, a hydroelectric project flooded the surrounding land, turning a tower that once stood on solid ground into an isolated structure in the middle of the lake. More than 80 years later, its five-story body still stands while water surrounds the foundation. Moisture enters the bricks, and erosion slowly weakens the old base. Winter makes the challenge even harsher as temperatures fall to -4 degrees Fahrenheit and ice up to 20 inches thick hardens around the tower for weeks. To stop deeper erosion, engineers built a protective sand island in 2000 and reinforced the structure again in 2021. In summer, visitors must paddle across the lake by kayak to touch the moss-covered bricks of this hollow shell still standing alone in the water. At first, it looks like nothing more than a grey crack in the mountain, but Castello della Pietra suddenly appears between two cliffs, where its walls almost blend completely into the natural rock. Instead of resting on a deep foundation like a normal castle, the stone walls here are anchored directly into two steep rock faces. Inside the gap, which is less than 33 feet wide, little sunlight reaches the castle, while strong winds are forced through and keep the space about 9 to 13 degrees Fahrenheit colder than the valley. From the bottom of the gorge, the two cliffs almost hide the three-story structure, making many attacks from below very difficult in the past. Long ago, the only entrance was a wooden bridge across the drop, and destroying it could completely isolate the castle from the outside world. Today, visitors must climb hundreds of narrow metal steps fixed to the rock, with open space dropping away directly beneath their feet. Clinging to a sheer cliff in southwestern France, the magical village of Rocamadour looks exactly like a medieval kingdom defying gravity. Rising nearly 400 feet above the gorge below, its ancient stone houses and sacred churches stack perfectly on top of each other in three dramatic tiers. For more than 1,000 years, this sanctuary has drawn millions of devoted pilgrims seeking the legendary miracles of the Black Madonna. To reach the sacred shrines above, faithful visitors still bravely climb a grueling staircase of 216 stone steps on their own knees. According to legend, deep inside the town's cliff still lies a legendary sword, once belonging to a famous knight from ancient French epic poetry. Though once burned during religious wars, Rocamadour still stands firm, continuing to tell a story of faith and legend carved into every stone. Stretching directly over the crashing waves of the Indian Ocean, the historic Pamban Railway Bridge delivers one of the most spectacular, heart-pounding journeys on the planet. Inaugurated in 1914, this stunning feat of engineering stretches more than 1.3 miles across unpredictable waters to fully connect a sacred island with mainland India. Right at its center, a remarkable mechanical section actually splits apart and lifts straight into the air, allowing large ships to pass safely underneath. Because this region is constantly battered by devastating cyclones and corrosive salt water, maintaining this historic iron structure requires incredibly brave daily inspections. Even after a powerful cyclone swept away a passenger train in 1964, this essential route was miraculously rebuilt in just 46 days. The man behind that lightning-fast recovery was only a young engineer at the time, yet years later, he became a legend of Indian railways, going on to build the entire Delhi metro system. A massive steel bridge stretches out into open air. It rises so high that the train crossing it seems to drift straight into the clouds below the mountain. Its name, Train to the Clouds, comes from that very image. A group of students once filmed steam from a locomotive mixing with mountain clouds many years ago. The highest point of the journey, the Polvorilla Viaduct in Salta Province, Argentina, sits nearly 13,780 feet above sea level. To reach that extreme altitude, engineers used winding tracks and intricate spirals instead of tunneling through the mountains, building it over more than a decade. But does anyone still remember its original purpose? This railway was once planned as part of a route linking Argentina with Chile, opening a path for goods to cross the entire Andes. That dream of connecting two nations eventually collapsed under economic crisis, leaving behind a short stretch of track that today only carries tourists up toward the clouds. From a distance, dozens of tight switchbacks stack on top of each other. They form what looks like a massive wall of asphalt draped across the mountainside, all visible within a single glance. This is Stelvio Pass, rising 9,045 feet in the northern Italian Alps. Its northern face alone holds 48 numbered hairpin turns. This road was built between 1820 and 1825 under the Austrian Empire. It was never meant for tourism. It simply connected a remote region to the rest of the empire. But here is something few people know. Before World War I ended, this very pass served as a real front line between two empires where soldiers once fought along these same switchbacks. Decades later, in 2008, the show Top Gear turned this old military road into a global icon. They called it the greatest driving road in the world. Today, thousands of drivers from around the globe still line up to climb the very same road that, a century earlier, once witnessed life and death battles. An engineering dream sat abandoned for nearly 2,000 years. The very man who started it was assassinated right in the middle of construction. Back in 602 BC, a tyrant ruling the city of Corinth in Greece dreamed of digging a canal through the isthmus, but the technology of his time stopped him. Instead, he built a stone road, dragging ships across on wooden wheels. Seven centuries later, Emperor Nero actually began digging with 6,000 slaves, yet he was assassinated before the project could ever be finished. That dream sat dormant for centuries. The Corinth Canal was finally completed in 1893 after 12 straight years of construction. Today, this nearly 4-mile-long canal has cliff walls rising 295 feet high. Yet it remains too narrow for most modern ships to pass through. Ironically, a project once built to shorten sea journeys is now too narrow for many ships today. Corinth has become an ancient dream that the world simply grew too large to fit through. More than 100 people were killed when the cliff above Manshiat Nasa collapsed, where red brick homes still crowd together at the foot of the mountain. In the narrow alleys, fine dust mixes with smoke from burning PVC plastic and rubber outdoors, making polluted air a constant risk for residents. Many homes still have unfinished roofs, which are then used as spaces for collecting and sorting waste. From above, rooftops and alleys almost disappear beneath desert dust. Colorful plastic bags and scrap materials spread across the neighborhood. Along the alleys, waste is compressed and stacked as high as 4 to 5 floors, forming large piles that lean close to the narrow paths below. Donkeys carrying waste move between old trucks, bringing scrap to crushing and pressing machines built by local workers. The Shanghai Maglev train travels at nearly 268 miles per hour, while barely touching the guideway, floating less than 1 inch above it. At that speed, air becomes the main source of resistance, so the front of the train is shaped to reduce pressure as it moves along the guideway. To create this motion, the main driving system is built into the route itself, where electromagnetic coils are powered section by section to pull the train forward. When two trains pass each other in opposite directions, their relative speed can reach about 536 miles per hour, creating a major pressure change in only a few seconds. Even on curves, the guideway must tilt by up to 12 degrees and use a wide turning radius to keep the train stable while changing direction. The full journey takes just over 7 minutes, while the LED speed display inside keeps passengers watching as the number approaches 268 miles per hour. More than 621 miles from the real coast, New Century Global Center still contains an artificial beach with waves beneath a massive glass roof, almost as if the ocean had been brought into the middle of the continent. The entire complex has about 18,300,000 square feet of floor space and rises about 328 feet high, creating an enormous architectural structure. Inside this vast complex, huge amounts of water and white sand form an artificial beach where powerful pumps continuously create waves for visitors. Directly above the beach, an LED screen nearly 492 feet long simulates daylight sunrise and sunset even on cloudy days. Covering the entire space is a massive curved steel roof network that creates huge open areas without dense rows of support columns in the middle. Beneath the roof are hotels, cinemas, an ice rink, and large public spaces, making the whole complex feel like a small city inside a single building.